Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm ZS Caravallo from ZK Research, and I'm here today with Melody Brue for Moor Insights. We're going to be talking about Enteprise Connect. We were both there last week. Mel, I guess you're back from your travels. How did you find the show?
It was, a whirlwind. It was good. I think lots of announcements, and I think a lot
Lots
of
of it.
progress.
Yeah.
Um, Interesting progress from last year. I think still on the AI front, there's still a lot of talk of what could be. But definitely progress from last year in terms of, what has actually rolled out, and but I think still a long ways to go. What was your thought?
Yeah. Before I get into that, just a quick bio on yourself for people that may not know you, though.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I am Vice President and Principal Analyst at Moor Insights and Strategy. And my coverage area is modern work. And as we were just talking about, modern work really encompasses a lot of things. And I think where people look at the sort of the future of work is now. And so we have to look at the modern work vertical as really anything from hardware to software that makes our work lives better. And at times that includes actually HCM, HRM, but really it's collaboration, it's all of the things that I just mentioned, and also customer experience and employee experience, because that's really come in so heavily into this contact center, UCAS. It's all rolling up together lately, as evidenced by many of the announcements that we saw at Enterprise
Yeah.
Connect.
I think one of my takeaways, and if you're the modern work analyst, and if so, future of work is the utopian view of what work could be. Modern work is kind of the mess of what we have today,
Of
where
what it is.
companies are struggling with, do I get employees back in the office? Do I not? When Eric Yuan just mandated people go in the office once a week, you'd have thought he killed somebody. There was so much negative news about that, right? And it's fascinating that so many companies put in mandates, then repealed them. And I think the part of the problem is companies just aren't sure what that should look like or how to get there, right? And so I guess we can set this vision, but in actuality, charting that path to the vision isn't really that clear. And I know, obviously AI was a big theme at the show, and AI is supposed to help with that. But I think
Yeah.
we're in this weird period now where AI is actually making things a little more confusing for people. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I agree with that. I think that there, well, very recently there was KPMG did a study where like 80% of CEOs of very large companies said that they still see people returning to the office in the next 3 years. And I find that surprising just because almost every company that I talk to and almost every executive and employee that I talk to say that there will continue to be some level of flexibility in terms of how people work. And there may be mandates or suggestions and sometimes mandates of, people, they want people in the office 1 to 2 days a week, but there has to be a reason for it. And nobody wants to go into the office 1 or 2 days a week or 3 days or whatever the mandate is to sit at their computer and be on a Zoom call with somebody who is probably in an office down the hallway, or the office isn't necessarily set up for the right type of collaboration. So, the offices need to be set up for it. Workers need to be set up for it. A lot of companies said they were never going back to the office, and so people moved. So you can't really walk that back. I mean, so there's a lot
IBM
to
tried,
this.
right?
Yeah.
I,
Oh, yeah.
IBM said, yeah, if you're not going to come back, you're fired, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to that. And I think, there's a lot of fear coming from this where people think, well, if those who are in the office are going to get preferential treatment. Some CEOs who actually have come out and said, you're better off being in the office. You're going to be, more visible, whatever. What AI does for that, we don't know yet, because who knows if it's going to make people more productive to the point where they can kind of back off and not be working as much, or is it going to make them more productive where they can be more visible to the organization and does AI actually help people create more in the time that they're working and get rid of that, mundane work so that they can be more, I don't even want to say productive, because I think that word is sort of overused when we talk about AI. I think
Efficient,
sorry, what was
more efficient, maybe is the word.
it's
Yeah.
efficient, it's creative, it's like thinking smarter, it's not necessarily the amount of work, it's the output, the quality.
I have talked to some people that with the rise of meeting summaries, where they're just not attending meetings, where they might have before, but if they're a supervisor or something and really don't need to be there, they just
Mm-hmm.
skip the meeting and they read the meeting summary to be able to catch up. And that's sort of interesting. I don't know if we get to the point where nobody attends the meeting and our, you know, and the AI, people just talk to each other and then give us a meeting summary of what we might have said. Right. The
Yep.
other obviously big topic or use case for AI is contact center. Right. Everyone's looking for the holy grail to make the contact center better, and I put better in quotes as that's I think some kind of a subjective term. One of the things I've noticed though is if you look at the stock prices of all the publicly traded ZKast vendors, Wall Street doesn't believe there's any benefit to it at all. In fact, I saw one of the analysts on CNBC saying the number one job it would displace is contact center agents. Now, I kind of agree with that to a certain point. I think if you're to pick up the phone, if you're the agent that's on the end of a phone where somebody's asking for password resets and things like that, so it's likely to go away. I
Mm-hmm.
think what's not really been clear is how, through the introduction of AI, you can actually expand the use of contact center to a bunch of other people, right? Field service salespeople, marketing people, and make it a lot more customizable. Because one of the challenges companies have had in doing that is if I'm a customer success person and I'm given an agent dashboard, I don't really need that information. I need a certain subset of that information. And so
Mm-hmm.
we can help that. But right now, while I was there, I did a workshop with a bunch of global brands, contact center leaders, and all of them are looking at using AI to lower costs, and then they'll figure out what to do with that savings later. And so the short-term use case seems to be, let's use this to make our people better, smarter, do things faster, more efficient call routing, bring costs down. And then we'll look at it as being kind of a revenue generator later. And I'm not sure if you're seeing the same thing or not.
Yeah, I think, that one of the metrics that I keep hearing is like time to resolution. And I'm not sure that that's really the key metric that people should be looking
Yeah.
at.
Or average handle time, right? So both of those.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one thing clearly that AI can do in the contact center is handle the, the quick, easy fixes. I think of in this sense, like give give AI the really quick, easy fixes so that the agents can concentrate on the higher touch needs, the things that are a little bit more complicated, the things that require more EQ, where somebody really needs like a handhold and that is really going to benefit them. I think that benefits actually the not just the customer experience, but the agent experience, the employee experience, because they get to have more meaningful interactions with customers, not just handle problems that could probably easily be solved with AI.
Yeah.
I think one really interesting use case is the proactive outreach. When companies know that there's something wrong and they can quickly use AI to reach the affected customers, avoid those thousands of inbound calls, let those agents handle the more important work, and eliminate all of those calls that otherwise, don't need to happen.
As you mentioned, there was a lot of news at the show.
Yeah.
And let's do a little bit of kind of a rapid analysis news here. Let's each pick three topics or three pieces of news that we liked and say why we liked it and have the other person react. So I'll go first. And I thought maybe if I were to give an award out for the coolest product announcement, it was the contextual AI from NICE. And what that is again, all these contact centers have AI in them. NICE is able now to take the feedback from current calls and update their LLMs, which they build themselves, and build an AI with memory. So if you call into a contact center a bunch of times and you have a certain history with them, and I do the same thing, we're going to start getting different responses because our history is different. It's at the point now, I was talking to Andy Truba, one of the product managers, and he said they can actually figure out if the person prefers a person with a softer, more kind voice and one that's maybe more empathetic versus a person that just wants you to get to the point, tell me what I need to know and let me hang up. And
Yeah.
so I thought that was pretty interesting that we can actually now create AIs with memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is really interesting. And I do think that that adaptive learning is going to be super important with AI because of that, because you will be able to identify customer preferences and user preferences, right? I mean, even things like, if I don't like the way that that initial email was written, I should be able to give feedback and it should learn from the feedback that I give. So different use cases, but I do think that that adaptive learning is super important. And I agree with you that that's.
Yeah. Well, you brought up the point too that the proactive outreach is important. So if you're going to reach out proactively, you better know what the customer preferences are and you better know what's important to them. Because if you don't, they're just going to look at it as you're badgering them and then spam. And so you're going to take something that was meant to do good and create harm.
Yep.
So then is what was your what was one of the pieces of news you liked?
Well, so I think you said if you were going to give an award, and actually this one did win an award, but RingCentral rebranded their MVP and launched RingEX, which I talked a little bit about, but this is the company's platform and the rebranding as EX kind of also comes along with embedding their RingSense AI into the platform. And I think that, well, so I've been playing around with it a bit prior to the event. And having RingSense AI embedded into it means that it's injecting into everything, to phone calls, SMS, meetings, messaging, everything. And so it's able to kind of create the awareness, that contextual awareness of the conversation beyond just one channel. And so you can ask like a question of the RingSense from the generative AI, like what of my conversations been around, this upcoming event? And it will go through all of your history through all of those channels instead of having to go through one by one or only being able to do one particular channel. And you've seen this too, that more companies are doing this with call, where before that wasn't as prevalent. So you would have to go through and read the call transcription if you even had it. Whereas now it will summarize for you and you can search through it. So I think from an AI experience perspective, that's a really good experience because it gives you that information across all of those platforms.
Yeah, I like that as well. In fact, I was a big fan of the rebrand. I never really liked the name MVP. I thought it sounded a little forced, I suppose, just to come out with the acronym MVP. And I
Yeah.
think also with them having their own CX platform now, it's very clear. Ring
Mhm.
EX is for employees, CX is for customers. Obviously, there's a lot of things coming together between the two. And I do think that the ability to tell me what I need to know, like, for instance, I transcribe most of my calls, but it takes me so long to go back and find the nuggets. If
Yes.
I'm on top of things, I'll actually try and highlight things as it goes along, but it is
Mhm.
not an easy thing. And so anything AI that can make the lives of the user easier is good because I remember the CIO of Tesco once told me this, that one of the general rules of thumb he has for IT projects is the solution should never be more complicated than the problem. And I feel like sometimes with all these different things we're throwing at the user, we're getting a lot more of a complicated world. So if EX can simplify it, I think they were well deserving of the best of Enterprise Connect. So congrats to them.
Yeah.
My second one was the Avaya Zoom partnership. When I first saw this, it made me scratch my head a little bit. But then I
Yeah.
talked to some folks at Zoom and Avaya, And there's a lot of value in it for the customers. And so, to be clear, this is directed at the big Avaya customers. These are the who's who, the big governments and airlines and banks and things like that. And a lot of those companies, while we think everything's moving to the cloud, a lot of those organizations haven't moved to the cloud, and really for depreciation purposes or whatever, just reliability, they're not going to anytime soon, but they still want the benefit of UC. And so the way the partnership works is the Zoom phone client, or sorry, the Zoom meetings client will act as a smartphone for Avaya Aura. And so if I log into Zoom, the dialer comes up, I can actually make a call and it gets direct routed through the Avaya system. And so to me, that's a great thing for the customer, because the customer now can have the benefits of Zoom, and they can then still use their traditional phone system, but not have to worry about it being two separate things. And so I think it's good for Avaya because it lets them retain their customers, longer and keep them on the platform. And for Zoom, Zoom's had a big itching to get into the large enterprise, and so this helps with that as well. So I think whenever you do things that's good for the customer, it generally works out for the vendor in the back end. And so because of that, I thought it was and frankly, Mel, I think our industry needs better interoperability. The fact that we have to do things like this with custom integration to make things work is sort of a testament to how interoperable or uninteroperable, I guess, right? The word.
Yes.
The industry's been. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think this 100% backs up what Avaya and Alan Masrick has been saying is choose your journey. It allows customers to do things the way that they want to do without ripping things out, without changing the way, it's like, do you want to be, not everybody wants to be in the cloud. Not everybody wants to transition everything right away. Maybe they want hybrid, maybe they want some cloud, maybe they want edge, but I think this really backs that up to say, like, we'll partner with, in some cases, RingCentral, in some cases, Zoom. We're going to give the customer what they want. And so I think this partnership backs that up in a lot of ways. And clearly it's something that their customers have asked for. They're not going to just, make this up, right? So and with
Avaya being a global company, there's a lot of places where they operate where you can't even get cloud calling, right? So this still allows you to have the benefits of Zoom without having to do that. So that's good for both. So anyways, number 2 for you.
So you're talking about interoperability, and now I feel like I'm sort of repeating a Zoom one, but HP Poly had some introductions of some new video hardware with Zoom connectivity. And I think what's interesting about this, and to me, I think is great, is that there's so many things where people want to be able to just quickly get on a meeting. And I think the headphones with the Bluetooth connectivity immediately will connect to Zoom calls, and without any sort of dongle or anything. These are the Poly Voyager headsets. I've used many of the Voyager headsets. There's a couple different versions of these. But to be able just to connect right away without having to, do the whole like pairing of it, I think is super important for no matter what, whether you're connecting to Teams or WebEx or Zoom. They just happened to announce this with Zoom. But there were a couple of other hardware things too that were announced. And I actually want to hear what you have to say about this. But HP Poly also, I don't think this was actually announced at the show, but it was something that was showcased there, which is the Poly Studio E360, the center of the table camera. I heard like a lot of sort of I'm going to just say negativity about this. And I don't think it had anything to do with their device. I think it has to do with devices long ago that were introduced that were sat in the center of the table and sucked, right?
Microsoft Roundtable.
Yeah. Okay. I actually went and I saw a demo of this and I used it, and I thought it was actually quite nice. I mean, it really does give you like a pretty clear, immersive view. I don't know about, in every scenario of every meeting room shape and size, but in the right setting, I think it really captures people nicely in frames. And it's like a kind of pillar, very unobtrusive piece of equipment. And I was surprised that people were like, center of the table, but like, why? Why not?
Well, when I first heard that, I thought the world does not need another center of the table camera. And because we've had a bunch of them and they've never worked all that well. The only time center of the table camera works is in the old Star Trek series where for some reason that's how they communicated.
Yeah, well, but now we
But
have AI and all the things to make it
well,
better.
in this one, what's interesting about it is it interoperates with the other Poly Studio devices. So it can be your center of the table camera.
Right.
And it also does a lot of some of the cool things. Like if you were in the conference room, you wouldn't see yourself, which is something that people didn't like about the old one. Now it's smart enough to know that you're you and I'm going to cut you out. But it works with the other devices in the room. And so if I'm walking around and speaker tracks turned on and things like that, it creates a much better, two camera experience. And so I think it is different that way. The
Yeah.
headset that you're talking about was the Bluetooth Direct, which is
The
done in
booth,
partnership
yeah.
with HP, where you don't need the dongle because it's an HP laptop. And to me, what's important about that is I remember when HP and Poly first came together, that acquisition happened, I thought, huh? I understand conceptually it's things people use, but that doesn't necessarily mean they belong in the same company. But this is a pretty cool use case of where it's a Poly headset and HP laptop and the things work together. So I just pick up the headset, put it on, and it's as if it were how to dongle with all the controls and things, but I get it without that. And so I'm with you. They in fact, the HP Poly booth was loaded with new devices for all different medium sizes, and I think that's an important thing too, because you don't have to. Typically, people would overbuy or underbuy, and you'd have a sucky experience. The hard part, though, is helping customers understand what to use, where, and how. And I think that's something that's maybe a pro services or a partner opportunity for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the case in so many ways. Now it's like kind of going back to what we talked about of like how do people want to work? Are people in the office? Are they not in the office? And then meeting rooms have changed. People were in cubicles. Now they're most of the time meeting in different spaces. So even figuring out how to best equip a meeting room, people
Yeah.
are still figuring that out. And I mean, you can see that even from what was announced from Cisco, from other vendors, that we're still figuring out meeting rooms, and what kind of equipment people need in those rooms to to make the experience good for the people in the rooms and the people outside of the rooms.
Yeah, and actually, so staying on that theme, my number 3 topic would be the new Cisco devices. I think Cisco's done a really nice job, I think, on the device side. And other vendors, I mean, they really do make really good devices. They have the partnership with NVIDIA that's actually almost 10 years old now, I think, and that allows a lot of stuff to be done on board. And so if you use a Cisco device, that offloads a lot of the AI processing capability from your software client, which is actually good for your PC. So they announced a couple of things. One was the Board Pro G2, which is one of their big, in-room boards. They called it the next generation Board Pro. But it does provide better in-meeting views. It's got a 90 megapixel dual lens camera. I remember seeing that it's a very clear picture, but the 2 camera gives it a multi-screen layout. So you can actually have 2 different things up on the same board. As I said, the NVIDIA chipset and computing engine allows you to do a lot of AI stuff on board as well. They also announced a phone, which I thought was kind of interesting, because if there's one part of the ecosystem that maybe creates a bit of a yawn, it is phones. But you know what? There's still an awful lot of phones deployed out there. This one's highly customizable, through their Spaces product or through QR code, and it has end-to-end encryption in it, which is interesting that I find, because as a topic, security hasn't really ever been top of mind with communication buyers, but I think it should be. But it's always one that kind of flies over people's heads. But it is good to see innovation in devices, and I think a lot of people think that you can use a good enough device, but That's certainly not the case in meetings. And so I don't know if you went to the Cisco booth and saw those.
I did, and I agree with you. I think they make great devices for several reasons. I mean, one, you can look at the devices, and we were both in Oslo at their device center. Um, they last forever, which, from a business standpoint, you could argue maybe is not the greatest. But what I really like about the Cisco devices is, one, I think they're built beautifully. I mean, they do a really, really nice job at design. But they also just do a really good job with, like, I think this one was like almost 75% post-consumer recycled plastic. They have
Yes.
like low power modes. They have like optimal energy efficiency. They have like energy usage where it's like on different times from the Cisco Control Hub that they can use it. They can program it so that, it knows at different times it can use lower energy usage. So it's not, they're smart devices as well. They're designed very intelligently, not just for use case, but also for um, sustainability, for longevity, for connectivity, for security. They can all be controlled from the control hub. There's just so many things about them that it's like, okay, that's a phone, right? Like you look at it and go, it's a phone. There's more to it than a phone. So I do think they do a great job with devices.
Yes, yes. No, I think that's one thing they do really well. And so you get the last word. What's your last news du jour?
So I think we can't necessarily talk about Enterprise Connect without talking a little bit about Teams. I mean, there was some Teams news today, which um, I guess we all expected, that they're going to separate Teams from.
Yeah.
But the Teams at Enterprise Connect, I think they had some interesting things. One thing that I really liked, they talked a lot about digital debt and just the number of emails, the amount of things that we all have to catch up on each day, the amount of time spent doing that, and how like these particular feeds that you can customize to kind of make the most of your time rather than having to go through everything, sort of customized to you. Those things are interesting, kind of time-saving things. One of the things I thought was really cool was the voice isolation in the noise kind of cancellation, where, I think actually Zoom does an incredible job of noise cancellation when it comes to outside noises. But I'm sure you saw the demo with the voice isolation in Teams, where somebody can be sitting right next to you talking, but it actually learns your particular voice and then drowns out that other voice. I thought that was very cool. I think, there was something like 40 updates in Teams, so there's not, any any possible way to go through and name all of those. But I do think paying attention to that digital debt, to how much kind of we have to ingest every day just to get our days started. When you kind of cram so much into a tool like Teams, I like that they're paying attention to that. I do think that Microsoft in general, when it comes to Copilot, they're really trying to quantify the amount of time that is saved. We talked about this a little bit in the beginning of like, how do we quantify the time saving, the productivity and whatever around AI? And so far that's been really anecdotal. And I think that it would be really great. I know they have a work trend index coming out in May or June. I think it would be really great to have a little bit more solid metrics around what kind of time savings or what kind of benefits, not just time savings, but what are the benefits that people are getting out of AI, out of Copilot in particular. And but I thought that some of those features, I think that the customized feed and the voice isolation were standouts to me.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how the voice isolation one works. WebEx has had the feature optimized for my voice for a while, and I've
Mhm.
used it before, and it's kind of weird because when you see people beside somebody, you actually expect there to be a little bit of background noise, but the
Yeah,
WebEx works so well that there's no noise, and it's almost like the person's in this cone of silence. But it really does work well because I do a lot of calls, from Starbucks and things like that, and even with noise removal on, it doesn't help, and so that's a great feature. You know,
yeah.
the quantifying the benefits of Copilot's interesting because there's been a lot of criticism thrown at Microsoft for charging $30 a month for it.
Hmm.
So they don't have a problem with $30 a month if it does what it's supposed to. Even if it saves you an hour a week, 30 minutes a week, $30 a month is a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
So I am a little concerned that so many other vendors just give it away for free. And I do think that eventually we'll expect a certain baseline of AI for free and then pay for things on top of that that make us more productive. But Teams has come a long way. I still think they can do a little bit more on the usability side of things, but certainly the AI features do make it more usable. So,
Yeah.
so that was our top six. Mel, anything else you want to add?
No, I think I really look forward to next year Enterprise Connect and seeing how far we've come on these things, like the things that we can measure. And
Yeah.
I do actually, I think you make a really good point on pricing. Um, I I actually recently talked to the CEO of one of these big companies who made a very interesting comment about like how much AI do you need? And because we were talking about pricing and where if you're paying $30 per month here and $30 per month here, and maybe you're getting one free here, but you're getting $30 per month here. At what point do people say, well, why do I need that AI and I have this AI? And at what point are these AIs going to actually conflict with each other? Do you
Well,
know what I'm?
that's the right. I think industry data shows that on average companies have 3 to 5 meetings products, right, or UC products or whatever you want to call them, and
What?
then they have context on
Absolutely.
what Salesforce has their own. So it's
Yes.
possible that as a user, I have to now navigate 3, 4, 5 of these AI clients, right? And one of the companies, actually, I ran into a company that are called C1, the old Converge one. They actually just roll out a product called Ellie, which works across all your apps. And so we'll see what customer feedback is on that. But I think we need more of those things. And in fact, this is where I implore to the vendors, create better interoperability between your products, because I think if you're a Zoom customer, you would probably love it if you could actually use it with, you could pull Teams data or vice versa, and then you let the best product win. But as I mentioned before, our industry has been built on walled gardens, and
Yeah.
it looks like it's trending down that path, and that's bad for everybody.
You know who has done a really good job of that is Grammarly, which
Yeah,
is you can use Grammarly almost anywhere. And now that they have these app extensions where you can actually create a Jira ticket when you're in Gmail, and like there's the interoperability of Grammarly has actually become like really, really good. And I thought, initially when all of these co-pilots and AI assistants, started kind of coming out and correcting your grammar and all of that, I thought, well, Grammarly's in trouble. They're not.
yeah,
Grammarly has answered that call, I think, quite
yeah.
well.
No, I use Grammarly all the time, so I don't think I
Yeah.
could live without it. So
I mean, and I think they've really done a great job of being able to kind of work across all of these platforms. And, obviously there's a lot of things it doesn't do, but like with these app extensions, I was actually shocked when I, could create a Jira ticket or put something into HubSpot and not have to leave where I was. It eliminates a lot of that toggling back and forth between apps to get something done. And so I think that like these AIs, these co-pilots, AI assistants are going to have to talk to each other. They're going to have to, you know,
yeah. That's all we need is
Otherwise,
the X's and talking to each other and then telling each other they're wrong. So, all right,
my
Mel.
AI will call your AI.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was a good show, and I was happy to run into you there. So,
Yay.
um, yeah. So, anyways, I'll see you probably at AI Connect. Right? They're going to do a midterm dedicated AI event in Santa Clara. So we'll see how that goes. So,
Of
anyways,
course,
on
I have
behalf
to
of
be
Melody
there.
Brue, for more insights, I'm ZS Caraval from ZK Research saying thanks for watching. Please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on my next episode of ZKast. Thanks, Mel.